Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to Chamber Connects. And I'm pleased to introduce a friend of the Chamber and Delaware County to you this morning as our featured speaker. Jen Metzger was elected to the New York State Senate back in 2018. Jen, that feels like a million years ago. To represent the 42nd District, which includes several towns in Delaware County. Now she's serving as an appointee to the New York State Cannabis Control Board, and is here with us this morning to talk about some of the framework for regulation, what's been done with the Cannabis Control Board, what still needs to be done in advance of permitted statewide retail cannabis sales. Jen, welcome to Chamber Connects. I know you got a busy schedule today, and I appreciate the time that you're going to be able to spend with us for the next 30 minutes. Where do we start? Where are we right now in the permitting process?
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, Ray, I have some slides I'd like to share, and I'm going to cover all the bases with you all. I want to try to get through them in like 10 minutes or so, so I can leave plenty of time for questions. So, say 10 to 12 minutes. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. And hold on, I'm slow to get this together, but one sec. All right. So just, to make sure we're, have the broad context. Our work started was made possible by passage of the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act that was signed into law last year, March 31st. And that law legalized adult use cannabis and also expanded the state's existing medical cannabis and cannabinoid hemp programs. When I was in the Senate, I introduced the legislation that created the cannabinoid hemp program. So it's fun to be on the other end of it, on the regulatory side. But the legalization of cannabis, importantly, it represents a shift, from, something that had been criminalized to a public health framework for policy. So the Office of Cannabis Management is responsible for regulating all aspects of the cannabis industry, all three programs, the existing medical, the existing hemp program, and the new adult use program. The law really, a very central component of the law is to promote social and economic justice and right the harms of the criminalization of cannabis in the past and the disproportionate impact it's had on certain communities. And we are, advancing these goals in several different ways. First has been in criminal record expungement. So for convictions for like cannabis related convictions, for things that are now legal, we have already expunged 300,000 records across New York State and suppressed another 100,000, which are on their way to expungement. This is extremely important for folks because when you have a criminal conviction, it affects your ability to get a job, rent an apartment, get a scholarship to attend college. So this was a very important step forward. Another piece of it is to promote equity in the marketplace. So we have a goal of awarding 50% of all adult use licenses to social and economic equity applicants. I'll talk about who is in that, or actually I'll quickly go over who the law considers to be social and economic equity applicants. There are different categories. One is, those individuals who have been harmed by the criminalization of cannabis, so have had convictions. It also includes distressed farmers, veteran service disabled veteran-owned businesses, and women and minority-owned businesses. Those are the different categories of adult use licenses that will be prioritized once the program is up and going. And finally, community reinvestment is also an important component of achieving these social and economic equity goals. The law requires that 40% of the adult use cannabis tax revenue be put into a community reinvestment fund that goes toward rebuilding communities that have been disproportionately impacted by policing during cannabis prohibition. So we have been really, really busy since our first board meeting, Cannabis Control Board meeting on October 5th. There was actually, there are only 5 members on the Cannabis Control Board. I have 4 other colleagues, and we have been building a brand new state agency. This hasn't happened in many decades. The Office of Cannabis Management. We've hired over 100 staff so far, and when all is said and done, we'll probably be over 200 employees in this agency. It's everything from compliance and inspections to public health professionals, to business development, program staff members. It's a really the Office of Cannabis Management is a very comprehensive agency covering all aspects of the cannabis program. We have taken some important steps to expand the existing medical cannabis program. We've made it less costly. We've eliminated fees for cannabis, for medical cannabis patients to register. We've also expanded the program to include whole flower, and actually hot off the presses, just the day before yesterday, when we convened, we approved regulations that enable medical cannabis patients to grow cannabis at home for their own use. So that will increase accessibility and affordability. We've also revised and expanded the cannabinoid hemp program. A couple of new additions to the regulations that I'm very proud to have contributed to really help our small farms. One is to enable, it creates a new on-farm processing license for farms, so they that it's less costly. They don't have as many hurdles to go through to get it. It's limited to small farms, and it'll just it'll enable them to have that kind of value added activity and benefit. Another was another provision that I contributed was a definition of craft for labeling. There's a huge opportunity to create craft, like we have a craft beverage industry, craft cannabis industry. And so it's very important to kind of, define it in a way that really does benefit our small businesses and our small farms. We've also introduced a big part of our mandate is public education. We initiated a statewide public health education campaign. It was called Cannabis Conversations, and the messages were about making sure that people under 21 don't get involved in cannabis, and talking about the risks to youth, also the risks of secondhand smoke, traffic safety, and equity. These are these are kind of all of the public messaging components we have been focusing on. We also, and I'll talk about this in greater detail, announced the Seeding Opportunity Initiative. This is a conditional licensing program that is happening right now. And it's the first in the nation. We'll talk about it in a moment.
Okay.
Lastly, we've been doing a lot of community outreach, literally going to communities across the state and having forums to let folks know what we're doing, and raise awareness about this new conditional licensing opportunity that has been ongoing. So the Seeding Opportunity Initiative I mentioned, it has several components. They're conditional licenses because we don't have the full regulatory framework in place yet. We'll talk about the timeline for that in a moment. But this conditional licensing program is truly the first in the nation. First of all, we're leading with our farmers in the cultivation of cannabis, unlike many other states where it's been, really giant vertically integrated companies that have been, growing indoors. We are leading with our farmers in this program. We have already issued 261 licenses to farms around the state. That includes, we actually have at least one licensee in Delaware County. And they had to have been licensed hemp growers. So that is a prerequisite for participating in this program. We also, we've issued now 25 conditional adult use processing and manufacturing licenses. And again, these tend to be farm-based operations. They're not entirely. And again, limited to those who were already participating in the state's cannabinoid hemp program. And the reason for that is because, that regulatory framework is already in place. Since we don't have the full licensing and regulatory framework in place yet, it just made sense to use the existing program. So that adult use cannabis is being grown right now across New York State. It's being processed, and the last piece of it are the conditional retail licensing program as part of this Seeding Opportunity Initiative. And those first licenses, the application process for those licenses closes on September 26th. And we expect to have about 150 dispensaries across the state under this program, and that will be opening their doors, or at least some of them will be opening their doors before the end of the year. I talked a little bit about this already. There are a couple of requirements for the cannabis, for the conditional adult use cultivator licenses. They have to participate in sustainability and equity mentorship programs to help support this, the new entrepreneurs entering the market when we open up the full licensing program. So the retail licenses in other states have tried to, so a requirement of the conditional retail licensing program, we really wanted to lead with equity in this program. One of the requirements is actually that you've been an individual, or you have a family member that has been affected by the criminalization of cannabis in the past, activities that are that are now legal. It's also required that you have had business experience. And I'll get to why that's important in a moment, but the state, so other states have tried to kind of lead with equity, but they've ended up not being able, they've ended up not issuing many licenses to folks that have been disproportionately harmed. One of the biggest barriers always is access to capital. So in this year's state budget, the enacted state budget approved a $200 million public-private partnership that to enable, basically the state is with private partners are investing in leasing retail space at locations across the state, and designing and constructing those spaces and basically outfitting them for retail dispensaries, so that the first round of licensees can literally just, walk in and start their business. It's not a gift, it's a loan, they're paying it back over time. But again, that access to capital has been an insurmountable barrier for individuals in other states. So this is a really first in the nation program that we're doing. And again, this is only for this conditional licensing program. This is not for the larger licensing program that will be opening up in early 2023. So this is probably the slide you all are most interested in, which is the timeline. So, the conditional licensing programs, as I've said, they're all well underway, and the retail licensing program application portal is closing in just a few days. So, that program is well underway. We are working on the larger regulatory framework. We've already issued draft regulations that are out for public comment now on testing, marketing, and labeling and packaging requirements. If you want to weigh in on those, you can go to our website, and I'll give you that information in a moment. You can review those regulations and submit public comments. We're working on the rest of the regulatory framework. We hope to have that ready in the coming months. I'm hoping by November, and will be put out for public comment. That process, the public comment process, it's set out in state law. It takes some time, but it's important because it's really important to get public feedback, to consider that public feedback, and to make changes as necessary. So, but we expect to be issuing the first round of conditional retail dispensary licenses this fall, issuing the entire draft regulatory framework for the full program this fall. And by, I'm hoping the first quarter of 2023, this slide says the first half, expectation management, but we will be opening licensing for the rest of the industry. So if you have, I want to encourage you to sign up for the Office of Cannabis Management mailing list. These are the links. I can share these slides, Ray, if that's of interest.
Jen, we're recording this, so the copy of this recording is going to be going to everyone.
Great,
including
great.
those slides. So
great. And what's not
on the
here,
call will get that.
Okay, great. What's not on here, but should be on here, is our website, which is www.cannabis.ny.gov. And there is a lot of information on our website. So I suggest you check it out.
Great.
And I will stop there.
And just as a reminder to folks, if you have some questions, please post them over in the chat area. Jen, just a couple questions that I have that came in advance of the meeting. You talked about the cultivator licenses, and I think we have 3 cultivators actually active here in Delaware County. One is Ravensview Genetics, and I see Joanne and Michael on the call. That's located just outside the village of Delhi. And a question from that I have from them really talks about not the flower, the leaf, but the seed. And they're about to, as I said, Ravensview Genetics, one of our cultivators, and they're about to harvest what so far looks like to be a very successful outdoor cannabis crop. I was there. We did a business after hours with them a couple weeks ago, and they have about 1,700 plants that covers about 30,000 square feet. They and some of their cultivator colleagues have identified a need for having access to seeds that have been stabilized and specifically climatized for our local region. So that they can ensure those seeds can ensure greater resistance to pathogen, overall better production outcomes. They did that work in hemp production, would like the opportunity to implement something of a conditional nursery license to ensure that cultivators and growers have access to a New York State seed market. Is there something that might be able to be done to encourage the Office for Cannabis Management to institute something like a conditional nursery license here in New York State? Or is there some other mechanism that's in place or being considered to allow them and others to bring the science into the development of seeds for the benefit of the whole market?
So that's really important, developing those genetics for, for our climate, for New York. As you probably know, their nursery licenses are one of the many license types that we will be making available and are really so critically important. Like the nursery license, that's like the linchpin, right? For everything else. So so it's very important. I don't know if we can somehow make that available like earlier on when we're opening the regulatory process. I could certainly bring that idea back. It's not possible to issue a conditional license because it's complex and legal, but the cultivation and processing, conditional cultivation and processing licenses were made possible through legislation. That legislation was passed, sponsored by Hinchy in the Senate, and Donald Lepardo, I think, in the Assembly. But and that wasn't a piece of it, unfortunately. Nursery licenses were not a piece of that. It would have been good if they were, but it wasn't. So we're going to have to wait. We couldn't do it through regulation at this point. I mean, it doesn't make sense to, because of the long period of time it takes to, make that happen. So the only possibility, and again, I don't know if it's a possibility, is to try to get an early start on that one. In the regulatory process, we'll have to see, but it obviously is a really important piece of it. And, we're looking forward to really supporting that development of, the genetics for the plants that will really thrive here in our climate. But it seems like I've toured a few farms, and certainly I've been really impressed by what I'm seeing growing out of doors. So it seems like it's been a great season.
Well, Jen, I consider this a standing invitation. If you want to come and see some of the cultivation facilities out here in Delaware County, you tell me, and we can make that. Lily and I can help make that happen. Our cultivators are very eager to show off what they've done.
Fabulous.
So I'm, with the issue with the seeds, I'm glad it's on the radar. When you talk about that full vertical integration, it starts with seeds. It starts with the seeds. You went through a timeline with us, and when can we expect? Right now, those cultivators have that conditional license, and
Yes, and that license is good for 2 years.
right.
So
When
they're
do
going to
you think?
continue growing while it's
Well, as some have said, that, and as at least one of our cultivators told me, he's like, we're building the airplane while it's in flight.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty fair description, I think. The When do you think you can expect that non-conditional cultivation license to come out, so that these folks have time to build out the plant and the facilities that they
Right.
need, that will adhere to the
Right.
regs?
Right. So I am hoping, as I said, the first quarter of 2023 that we will begin licensing. That's my hope. But as I said, staff is saying first half. So between the first quarter and first half, but we'll do what we can. You will get to see, of course, changes do happen over the course of public comment, but you'll get a sense of the direction that we're going, as early as November, when we issue the draft regulations for public comment. So I think that'll be really helpful. That'll be really helpful to give people a sense of where they're going. They can start kind of, and they should be already thinking, planning. I mean, they're drilling down to the specifics of, like, how large a facility can I have, how large a canopy can I have? You won't know that until we issue the regulations. But you should be starting your business planning now. If you're interested, if you're really serious about pursuing this opportunity.
So it sounds like, stay tuned is the message, and
Yeah.
sometime in November,
Yeah.
everyone will get a better sense of things.
Yeah, and I have to say, it has been great having this conditional licensing program too, from our perspective, because we're learning from it too, as on a more limited scale as we're rolling it out. So it's going to make it that much more smooth when we open it up for the full program.
Jen, we only have another minute or two. I just want to let folks know, Department of Labor is, it sounds like Department of Labor is a full partner in what your board is trying to achieve. I see that this weekend, Department of Labor is hosting a job fair specifically to the cannabis industry down in Binghamton. So I suspect that we'll see more of that popping up, no pun intended, across New York State.
Yeah, and I want to mention that a lot of community colleges are rolling out, cannabis programs. So look for those as well.
Well, if I can interject, SUNY Morrisville.
SUNY Morrisville is first
And
program in the state.
those colleges, and if I can, as a member of the College Council at SUNY Delhi, I have to put in a pitch for the colleges of technology. SUNY Morrisville, SUNY Cobleskill both have programs that talking about the cultivation. Delhi actually is even having some very preliminary discussions about how do they integrate this cannabis industry with food. and their background in hospitality management and
That's
culinary
great.
arts. So we got some very exciting things that are coming up. Jen, it's 9 o'clock, and I
I
want to.
just want to answer one question really quick. I see somebody had asked about home grow for personal use if you don't have a medical card. So, in the law, it says that within, the first, the home, were to enable home grow of adult use cannabis within 18 months of the first retail dispensary licenses. That's like way too long. But we will be, so you can expect them. I am hoping for soon after our first dispensary licenses, open. But I've actually been advocating on moving that forward because I just don't see the reason to wait. But we had to under the law do medical cannabis home grow first, and then we'll be moving on to.
Jen, am I mistaken? Wasn't in the original legislation allowed individuals to have 6 plants for personal use?
Yeah, well, yes, but there were time.
Oh, okay.
It had, once we developed the regulations, it didn't
Got
make it legal. So it directed us to develop the regulations within a certain time frame, and it was 6 months for medical and then 18 months for adult use.
Okay.
But yes, any questions, too, I really encourage you to, submit them on our website. And we've got a lot of great FAQs on the website. Anytime we get a question, we put it in the answer in the FAQ, because we figure other people probably have the same questions too. So please take advantage of that.
Well, Jen, I want to respect the time that you're able to give us this morning. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this information. This has been super informative. A lot of information squeezed into the last almost 35 minutes. And again, just a reminder to everyone, later this morning, you will be receiving a copy of the recording of this morning's program. We'll also be posting it to the Chamber's YouTube channel. So it'll be there, and I suspect our friends at Delhi Telephone and Catskills Air will be broadcasting it as well, because we need to get this information, accurate information, out to lots of folks. So thank you everyone for participating with us. Next month's Chamber Connects program is will be on the 4th Thursday of October. Brian Miller, one of our state assembly representatives, will be joining us, and Brian's a great guy. Jen, you know Brian well.
Yeah.
And it'll be a really informative, interesting conversation. So I hope to see you all there. Remember, with the Delaware County Chamber, we really are, as an example of today, we are stronger together. So thanks again for joining us, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Have a second.